safety not only of the public that we come into contact with, but also our staff.
What are the most important things that you think your workforce should be doing now to make sure that they can keep to as much as normal as possible, normal operations, and still continue to do the work while staying safe?
We have communicated to our staff that if their job allows them to work from home, to telework, we have highly suggested that they do telework. But as you know, the Census Bureau has a lot of operations, a lot of staff across the country that are conducting surveys and censuses. There's 130 surveys that are conducted on an annual basis. The 2020 census is the biggest one. So we are encouraging people to practice social distancing in everything that they do. We've altered our training, so it's virtual now. We're hiring people, bringing them on board, because right now there are invitations that are hitting mailboxes across the country, and if people respond online, by phone, and by mail, we won't have to actually follow up with them. So we're encouraging people to respond to the 2020 census now.
Yeah, I'm starting to see anecdotal reports of people receiving their notifications in the mail and being able to go online and fill those out. What kind of impact do you think that will have on operations? Do you have a sense yet of what you expect response to be online, phone, and via mail?
Well, these mailers, when they hit the mailbox, they're encouraging people to respond. Today, we have 10 million households that have already responded to the 2020 census. This is in line with all of our projections for response, so we're pleased with that. We want to make sure that people understand that we are listening and following the guidance of local public health authorities to ensure that we're practicing social distancing. So we're encouraging people to respond on their own, because a self-response is the best response. And when everybody responds, then the seats in the House of Congress can be apportioned properly, and also decision makers can make informed decisions for the next 10 years for social services that impact your daily lives.
Michael, you mentioned the telework encouragement that you've given at Census Bureau. Are you doing that on a case-by-case basis, analyzing whether people can telework? Are you broadly suggesting to everybody in the organization if you can do it? How are you evaluating who's eligible to telework and who's not?
We have a mission to conduct the census by December 31st, 2020, to turn over the population counts to the Congress and President. So on a case-by-case basis, we're talking to staff, and if their job, their role allows for them to do their work from home, we're highly encouraging that. But as you know, there are some individuals that have to come into work to conduct their work so that the census continues to be to operate. So on a case-by-cases, we're looking at that. We're making adaptations to all of our operations to ensure the safety of the public as well as our staff.
Do you have a sense yet of how many employees are able to take advantage of the telework opportunity, or is it too early for you to tell yet how many of your folks are able to work from remote locations?
Every day changes, just like the assessments, the advice, and the guidance that's being given by CDC. We're adapting every day and making changes to our workforce and the guidance that we're giving to our workforce, and creating different operational procedures to increase the opportunities for them to work remotely and to practice social distancing. So the amount of staff that can work from home, the amount of staff that actually still need to come into the office, that's ever changing. But first and foremost, we're balancing getting an accurate and complete count and conducting the census on time, but also knowing that we have to look out for the health and the safety of the staff and the public. They're number one.
What's your sense of how the infrastructure has held up, the IT infrastructure and so on, for the folks that are teleworking? Any issues there? We've seen reports at some agencies where they've run into some challenges.
Our IT infrastructure is intact. All systems are go. We are conducting the census. We have received 10 million responses from households already today. That hits the targets that we have projected. Our systems are up. They're running. 2020census.gov is the site that people can go to learn more information. As well, you can go to 2020census.gov and respond to the 2020 census.
Michael, we just have about a minute left. Anything that you've had to do regarding the physical infrastructure, the locations where people have to come to work, any changes you've had to make there?
We are currently following the guidance of local public health authorities when and where there is a need to alter our infrastructure or our actual physical buildings. We're following their guidance to ensure that the workspace is actually safe. The current situation at hand underscores the need for accurate census data. So when you're invited to respond, we encourage you to respond now, online, by phone, and by mail. It's easy. It only takes 10 minutes.
Michael Cook, thanks very much for joining me. I appreciate your time. The Pentagon's ban on travel for DoD employees includes temporary duty assignments, permanent station changes, and restrictions for hiring civilian personnel. For more guidance on policies for members of the military, Lernis Hebert, Principal Director for Military Personnel Policy. Lernis, thanks very much for coming on this morning. How definitive is the stop movement order? How are you evaluating exceptions or exemptions for uniformed personnel?
So just as in most of our personnel policies, we describe the broad underlying guidance and then give commanders in the field the flexibility to implement on a case-by-case basis. And that's no different here. The stop movements was laid out for 60 days to allow for securing safe and secure transportation for our military personnel coming back from overseas, and to establish the safety protocols and reception procedures that our stateside installations are going to need in order to receive those personnel.
How is this affecting PCSs that may be happening in the next 30 to 60 days or that were already in progress, that kind of thing?
Sure. So for the ones that we're going from one place in the United States to another place in the United States, those have been delayed for 60 days. Unless an exception is granted. And there could be reasons for mission essentiality that a commander might grant an exception. There could also be reasons for humanitarian reasons or for extreme hardship that was placed that we would go ahead and let that occur. Think of if an individual's household goods and vehicles had already shipped and they assess that the gaining location doesn't put the member at increased risk. Commander would have the authority to grant those types of exceptions. With regard to overseas, if you're in a level 3 country or going to a level 3 country, then we have delayed those individuals from coming back home. Therefore, we're also delaying those individuals that are stateside going to the overseas location. If you're in a level 2, CDC designated level 2 country, the military sponsor does transit to and from as long as the command determines it's mission essential. The family, however, is delayed or deferred for about 60 days until we can better assess the situation.
Lernis Hebert, a lot more we'd like to cover, but I appreciate your time today. We're out of time. Thanks for coming on. Up next, the do's and don'ts for taking time off during the coronavirus pandemic. Straight ahead on Government Matters, helping federal employees and managers understand leave policies. Don't forget, if you miss an episode of Government Matters, you can find it on our website, govmatters.tv. We'll be right back.
School, Fridays at 7:30 on AFN Pulse.
This class also provides guidance to sailors and Navy health professionals on healthy nutrition choices.
Attention Shapians, stay up to date on current and ongoing changes regarding COVID-19 closures, safety tips, and community plans via the Shape Notifications Facebook page.
Now at shopmyexchange.com. Buy it online and pick it up in store. It's easy. Just choose any eligible item. add it to your cart, and select Free Pickup in Store. Choose your pickup location and submit your order. The exchange will notify you by email when your order's ready for pickup. Buy it online and pick it up in store. Try it today at shopmyexchange.com.
Welcome back. The Office of Management and Budgets told all agencies to offer maximum telework flexibilities to federal workers, but some essential employees won't be able to leave their posts. Ricardo Pitts-Wiley's partner at Federal Practice Group. He has advice for federal employees trying to navigate leave during the pandemic. Ricardo, thanks for coming back on the program. What should federal employees know? What are the kind of the big factors about leave during a time like this?
Well, it depends on whether you have been exposed to the coronavirus or whether you have been quarantined because of the coronavirus. If you've been exposed to the coronavirus, but you are asymptomatic, and if you have been quarantined under the direction of a public health official, then you may be entitled to what's called weather and safety leave. Essentially, this is leave that is provided to the employee at the expense of the federal government because that particular person is not able to commute into work. Now, obviously, if an employee is able to telework, then they would not have a need for weather and safety leave. If someone has been exposed to the coronavirus and they are symptomatic, then they are entitled to sick leave. If they exhaust their sick leave, there's other various types of leave that they may be entitled to, such as advanced sick leave. They can also use their annual leave for medical purposes, advanced annual leave. There's also types of leave that can be donated to an employee, whether it be sick leave or annual leave. And if an employee was exposed while they were on the job, then they may also be entitled to workers' compensation. Something that I want to alert your viewers to is that the Congress has recently implemented some legislation that would provide for emergency paid leave as well as emergency sick leave. So that's something else that would be available to employees during this time period.
It strikes me that the big challenge here, Ricardo, is for folks who have run out of sick leave. Maybe they were sick back in the fall or over the winter. Something like this comes along, and they're really bumping up against their sick leave time, and it doesn't quite seem logical that they would have to use their vacation time to make up for sick time that they really couldn't help.
That's true. And, these federal government agencies do have quite a bit of flexibility in terms of what type of leave they approve for their employees. So employees may not have to exhaust all of their own leave. They may be able to, again, utilize some of the leave that's being provided through this most recent legislative action. But then also leave can be advanced to employees, or it can even be provided to employees by the government at no cost to the employee.
We're really tight on time. I apologize, Ricardo, and I'd love to have you come back, talk more about this, but it strikes me that the most important thing here to consider is that employees have options even if they think they might not have options. That's what I think I'm hearing from you. Am I on the right track?
You're right. Employees and managers have options with respect to how to deal with this process. And I encourage employees and managers to work together and to communicate with each other about solutions during this time period and be creative in their thinking about how to deal with all of this and still try to maintain some sense of normalcy and be able to meet the mission of each agency.
Ricardo, thanks very much for coming on. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Be safe.
I'm Sharice Hanner. You can now stay on top of all things that matter to the business of government, anywhere, anytime. Subscribe to the Government Matters podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, TuneIn, or simply ask your digital assistant to play the Government Matters podcast. For a quick fix of government news, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @GovMattersTV.
If your daycare's closed, Superstore has an answer.
Behold, the Baby Dome. 2 babies and sponsor. One baby leaves. Yeah. And then the other baby leaves too. Yeah. Superstore.
I like being given a challenge. Everything's different. You never know what to expect. And you get to work with your hands a lot. It's rewarding once you finish and step back and see that you made something or gave somebody power or the ability to do something. That it's not just as simple as plugging something in and it works. There's a lot on the back end that you have to do to give somebody power or the ability to power something up. I'm Lauren Gothi, and I'm an electrician.
Get your mail faster by using the right address format. For a ship or mobile unit address, format as follows. Your name, followed by your ship or mobile unit name, then your unit and box number, and last, your FPO region code and zip code. For sailors ashore, start with your name, add your PSC and box number, and end with your FPO and zip code. Expedite your mail with the right standardized address format.
If you're a parent, grandparent, or caregiver, nothing is more important than your baby's safety. You may have missed some of the recent product recalls that can put our babies at risk. You can get the latest information by downloading the CPSC Recall app or visit cpsc.gov/recalls. Help us to keep babies safe. Remove recalled products from your home and your child care center.
That's the latest from Washington. Join me weeknights at 8 and 11 on WJLA 24/7 News and Sunday mornings at 10:30 on ABC 7 to stay plugged in on issues that matter to the business of government. Thanks for watching. I'm Francis Rose.
Aquafina is Nora from Queens. Tuesdays on AFN Spectrum.
Don't compromise your future by popping positive for opioids.
Prescription opioids are effective pain relievers and addictive. When mixed with other drugs like fentanyl, they can be deadly.
Prescription drugs must be used within the prescribed time frame and for the intended purpose.
Report any new prescriptions from a civilian doctor within 10 days.
Having problems with your prescription medication? Contact a valid self-referral agent before you get into trouble and jeopardize your career and your life.
It's just not worth it.
You're watching AFN News.
Breaking news tonight, the urgent new coronavirus warning for young people, the staggering number of hospitalizations for age groups that were believed to be at lower risk.
It feels as if I smoked like a pack of cigarettes in a blizzard. It's like the air feels thin and it just feels very heavy on my chest.
Officials pleading with young people, observe social distancing guidelines as U.S. cases soar to nearly 13,000. Also, new hope for treating the coronavirus. President Trump announcing the FDA is fast-tracking 2 potential treatments. The battle ramping up, construction underway on an emergency hospital on a soccer field. On the front lines, critical shortages. The CDC telling doctors and nurses to use scarves and bandanas for masks as a last resort. The new travel warning, Americans now being told to avoid going anywhere internationally. In Italy, a grim milestone, the most deaths now anywhere in the world. A military procession carrying dozens of coffins. But China, for the first time, reporting no new cases. Should the extreme measures in China be used here in the U.S.? The alarm being sounded tonight on scammers taking advantage of the pandemic. What you need to know to protect yourself. And our experts answering key questions. The precautions you should take when food and supplies are delivered to your home.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
All right, good evening. We have known all along this was going to get worse, especially as more people are tested, and it certainly has. In some states and cities, the running tally of people infected by coronavirus has doubled, over 3,600 here in New York City alone. And as each day passes, some of the things we thought we knew about this virus have changed, like the risk to younger patients. A lot of what we're going to tell you tonight may feel overwhelming, but there is progress on some fronts, including the search for treatments. Our team is ready to go with the latest. We start with Miguel Almaguer.
Tonight inside intensive care units across the country, the CDC says nearly half of all coronavirus patients fighting for their lives are younger than 65. While often deadly for the elderly, the virus is now taking more lives of those who are not senior citizens. The young not only catching the illness at higher and higher rates, but also spreading it.
Oh, on the worst day, it was... it was a 10. It was rough.
Matt Schulte has had the virus for over a week.
It feels like my lungs are half fluid in them. The air feels thin, and it just feels very heavy on my chest.
As officials in Washington state scramble to build a 200-bed hospital on a soccer field, the number of coronavirus cases nationwide is hitting yet another milestone, climbing to over 13,000. More than half the cases in the country come from just 10 counties across 3 states, New York, Washington, and California.
The number of test positives is increasing.
Today at the White House, a call for social media influencers to warn the young about the virus. The governor of Maryland with a more pointed message amid spring break scenes like these.
If you are engaged in this type of activity, you are in violation of state law, and you are endangering the lives of your fellow Marylanders.
With the State Department making an unprecedented move, telling Americans not to travel abroad, Carnival Cruise Lines is offering their ships to serve as floating hospitals to relieve stress on a burdened onshore medical system. Now, the first 2 members of Congress, Mario Diaz-Balart and Ben McAdams, have tested positive, while in New Jersey, so have 7 members of the Fusco family. 73-year-old Grace died just hours after her son and 5 days after her daughter. Cases in neighboring New York are skyrocketing.
Nobody can tell you when this is going to end. Nobody can say 2 months, 4 months, 9 months. Nobody.
Amid ghostly scenes like this around Boston, as Americans heed warnings to stay away from others, the U.S. Census is suspending field operations, while the CDC suggested live streaming funerals to avoid crowds. The National Guard now deployed to over half the country.
With COVID-19, it's like we have 54 separate hurricanes in every state, territory, and the District of Columbia.
Tonight, our nation fighting the virus and fear as both spread across the country.
In a letter to the president, the governor of California now says over the next 8 weeks, he expects more than half of California will become infected with the coronavirus. That's more than 25.5 million people, a staggering number. And Lester, many are worried, could other states have similar projections?
All right, Miguel, thank you. Let's turn to the front lines of the pandemic and the people we're going to lean on through this crisis. The hospitals, the medical staff, they're running short on supplies. And while a vaccine may be more than a year away, the president says he's trying to fast-track 2 potential treatments. Here's Tom Costello.
On hospital campuses across the country, triage tents now help manage the crush of people fearing they've got COVID-19. Any needing hospitalization are isolated. Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston has set aside an entire COVID wing. Doctors and nurses in full protective gear.
We're spending up to 2 hours at a time in these rooms with all of the equipment on, which is very difficult. You can't really breathe that well, and it's very hot. So you get very exhausted wearing it.
Tonight, the American Hospital Association says it needs $100 billion immediately to deal with the emergency, as med centers nationwide tell staff to conserve masks.
In some cases where it's as safe as possible to do so, actually reusing those. And then for other things like respirator hoods and goggles, we are being told to save those so that they can be cleaned and reused later.
The government promises more are coming as the CDC recommends making masks out of scarves and bandanas. Also today, the president said 2 drugs already approved for other purposes are under review for COVID-19 patients. Chloroquine, a malaria drug, and remdesivir.
It's going to be very exciting. I think it could be a game changer.
But the drugs are not yet approved for COVID-19 and may not work. Remdesivir, originally designed for Ebola, may work better on coronavirus. Chris Kane was put on the experimental drug in a Washington state ER and says he saw fast results.
Within 48 hours, I was feeling a lot better. But I mean, I got a 5-day dose of it. And then I got home from the hospital over the weekend. So.
The good news, most people who contract the virus will have mild to moderate symptoms and can treat themselves at home.
It's not much more than getting rest, staying hydrated. If you have a fever, maybe taking, medication for the fever like acetaminophen. But the most important thing is really to practice social